Is it working now? Yes. Okay. Call this special January 15th meeting of the board with the building committee members to order. Ms. Meeker, will you please call the roll of the board?
Ms. Boucher.
Here.
Ms. Campbell.
Here.
Ms. Hastings.
Here.
Ms. Higgins.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Sadowski.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And I am here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. As you know, we originally had hoped to have cost estimates last week at our meeting. We did not, but glad to welcome tonight Bobby Williams, Tina Stanlowski, and Holly Miller from HMFH Architects, who have been working with us on the project, as well as Keith Kelly from Harbury Construction, which the district hired to independently review cost estimates. Tonight, they will present updated timelines. You will see that we have received a response from the city that the earliest that they think a special election could happen is June. So the timelines have been changed from last week to reflect the city's reply. They will also present updated cost estimates. We welcome members of the board and members of the building committee to ask questions during this presentation. We will not be taking a final vote tonight. After last week's meeting, I asked administrators to reach out to our legal counsel to ensure we had the proper language to ensure the intent of the motion that was made and tabled at last week's meeting. Our legal counsel has advised us that we must first hold a separate public hearing on a motion to construct a school at any location, so a new motion to construct a school at a new location, or to renovate a school at a new location. We would not, under the state law, the board would not need to vote, to hold a public hearing if it was to vote to put the matter on the November ballot, or to hold a special election, or to keep the project at broken ground. That being said, I would personally support holding a public hearing on any of those things. So given that, we will have our normal 30-minute public comment period during this meeting and hope to schedule a formal public hearing on next week if the board is able. Ms. Higgins.
Do we have to have a public hearing to entertain a motion to rescind the vote from December 2023?
Not to just simply rescind, but to, if you are to move it to another location, including rebuilding it or renovating a school on the Runlet property, that would require a public hearing.
So we could entertain a motion to rescind the vote.
If your motion is to simply not do anything, then yes, you could do that, as far my
That's not
understanding.
what rescinding the vote means.
Well, if it's to rescind the vote and not replace it with something else, then
Well,
yes.
that's what all this information would be, and that's what the public hearing would then be about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Meeker.
Just a point of clarification. Any variety of motions could be made, but not necessarily voted on tonight. So we could table anything till after a public
Yes.
hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, and we can hold a motion to hold a public hearing on an option or options.
So the initial motion, which was mine, waits until after the public hearing?
If your initial motion, as I recall it, was to rescind and
Just to stay at
move
Runlet.
the project back to Runlet.
Right.
That would
Because
require.
we were told in one of our meetings that that would not require a vote. That would require,
That would not require a citywide
Correct.
vote. No, but that would require a public hearing. If it was to move a project for a middle school back to Runlet. If
Okay.
it was to say, we're going to rescind and we're not going to make any other decisions.
Right.
That is a vote we could take tonight.
well, I have all night to decide on whether or not to make that motion, so
Wonderful.
I'll listen to some words and see what I think.
There you go. Who's going to start? Tina? Holly?
Kathleen, do you want me to take the
I
schedules?
believe we're going to start with the updated schedule based on the city's response on a special election.
Yep. Ready? Okay. Can everybody see the screen? All right, so we've moved all the dates, like Pam was saying. It used to be April, a special vote, and now we've moved them to June. We've highlighted in red the occupancy for the new project, and that's, sort of what we're looking at in all of these. That's what changes the most. So if we stay at the broken ground site, the schematic design is complete. We would go through design development. We only have a short amount of time, to complete that, so 1 more month, and then it would go to a cost estimate in August of 2025. Construction documents would then be complete in June of 2026. And if you notice in red, in the final column, that's what we're showing you was the original schedule if we, hadn't had this pause. So we're about a year off from that. Bidding would happen in October, and then construction would be complete in April of 2029 now. So it was 2028, now it's 2029. So then the school would basically move over the summer, the building would get commissioned, punch list, that's an ideal schedule, and it would open for the fall of 2029. In this case, demolition isn't needed. The sites would be completed as we were building the building, so the fields would all open with the building. That's the ideal thing about having a new site without any, complex phasing. So if we move to the Runlet site with a June vote, basically we have to redo a part of schematic design, so that would be complete in August of 2025. We can still use all of the programming that we did. None of that changes. The components of the building really don't change. We have the pods, we have the theater, we have the music. All of those can get rearranged in a different fashion to fit on the Runlet site. So basically design development has to be, for the most part, redone. That would finish in December of 2025. We would do a cost estimate complete in January, and then construction documents would be complete in November of 2026. So what happens is construction would be complete in September of 2029. So that means that you're going to have to move the kids in over the holiday break. So you're moving in December and January for that schedule. The other part of this is that it's a phased construction, and we have phasing plans if people have questions about why it takes longer. But basically, you've got to demolish Runlet, and in that space, you're going to complete the roadways and the fields in that area. So that would not be complete until August of 2030, and then the fields need, a full 2 seasons to grow. So that's a year before you can get on those fields. The next one. Any questions before I go to November? November you saw last week. Kathleen had presented this. This doesn't really change. Basically, schematic design is done if we stay at broken ground. Design development would be complete at the end of December. We would get the cost estimate in January. Construction documents would be complete in November of 2026. And construction would be complete in July of 2029. So this schedule works pretty well. You would again move in over the summer. The kids could start school in the fall of 2029. And all of the fields are being built the same way simultaneously, so everything opens at the same time. Now, when you go to the Runlet site, again, we have to redo part of schematic design. That would be complete in January. Design development has to be redone for the most part, so that gets completed in May. Cost estimate in June. Construction documents get completed in 2027, April of 2027. And then construction would be complete in February of 2030. So that means you're probably not moving in until the April break. It's tight in there. So the end of February you would be done. You would need to do some building commissioning. You could move in April. You might just at that point decide to wait for the summer. That's a whole nother conversation. But the earliest that you would be in there would be April of 2030. And again, the fields and the demolition of the building happen after that. So The site is complete in December of 2030, and the fields will be ready to use in the fall of 2032. Questions?
Anyone?
One of the things we were asked to look at is if the board made a decision this month, and in January, what would happen to the schedule if it was moved back to Runlet? And what we've looked at is basically schematic design could finish by March, design development would finish by July. August would be the cost estimate. Construction documents would be complete in July of 2026. And then the building would be complete in May of 2029. So then you would be able to occupy the building for fall of 2029, which is better than waiting till the June vote, because that puts you moving in over the Christmas holiday, the holiday break. So that does help you if that's a way you want to go. And again, demolition would happen after that. The site would be complete in March of 2030, and you'd be able to use the fields in 2031.
So a 6-month, we act now instead of waiting for a June vote, gets us a year earlier using the new facility at Runlet and the fields.
It gets you into
Instead
the
of 30
building over a summer,
Yep.
so you can move in over summer.
Correct.
And open the building for fall,
Yes.
instead of moving over the holiday break
Got it.
between December and
Yep,
January.
yep. And then it's using the fields a full year earlier, 2031 instead of 32.
Yeah. Questions? Alrighty. So then we're gonna turn it over to Keith to talk about cost. I just wanna have a disclaimer here. So we've looked at the construction costs for both sites. We've taken 25% of that for soft costs. This is an estimate. We will have to go in and sort of, dig into the details of all the things that may or may not change. So that's roughly the right ballpark. I just want to put a disclaimer on there that has a little nuance to it. But we wanted to give you a kind of look at what the total project cost would be, because that's what you all voted on when you put the cap on the project. So we wanted you to have something to compare that to.
And these prices have now been escalated for the delays.
Yeah, we'll see that in
Keith's
the
gonna get
next
into
couple
the
slides.
details
So
of that.
this is the summary sheet that is 2 categories we've talked about previously, is construction hard costs and then soft costs, which is associated with engineering and the support services for the project. So as you can see, the difference costs between Runlet and Broken Ground. We've done an updated estimate for the Runlet site. We were not on the team at the time this was presented in 2023. So we've taken our estimating efforts and applied it to a Runlet concept design that HMFH provided for us. So if we go to the next slide. So left column, Runlet School, essentially what we've assigned is that each site will be the same building. So those costs are carried across between the 2 sites for purposes of this evaluation. The variables that are between Runlet and Broken Ground are twofold. One is the site costs associated with each location and the phased construction that was referenced earlier by Tina, that the 30-month durations for the building and its construction holds true between the 2 sites. The variable in Runlet is the 12-month extension relative to phasing and logistics. We have to do some temporary constructions that allow for us to be able to build around the existing facilities. So that adds time and costs, which you'll see in the second line. The third line, again, is the building cost carried forward as a construction cost relative to each building being essentially the same on each site. The geothermal wells we carried forward across between both sites because the systems would be the same. And the site costs is where the variable would happen. I'll get into the detail of that, but essentially showing a difference of approximately $1 million in site costs, $1 million in the longer duration, and the demo and abatement of the existing buildings is the other variable that is between Runlet and Broken Ground. Obviously, we're not tearing down a building at Broken Ground. It's a empty site. So there's a $4 million cost associated with that. The 2 subtotals there, you'll see there. We'll show the difference of those construction costs. Because we're delayed by a year with this pause, essentially we're assigning a 3% escalation to the previous estimated values. Construction essentially runs about 3% per year, except for pandemic impacts, which we won't talk about right now. And so we've carried a appropriate escalation for a one-year delay of about 3%. If you remember when we presented this a number of months ago, we already had a escalation carried in the estimate for the building because we were carrying that forward to when we were starting in 2026. But because of the delay, we need to carry some more values of escalation. So the total number at the bottom would be a starting in any one of these scenarios of starting construction. There is a 6-month delay. You could call a couple of percentage points, but for purposes of this discussion, we don't know which calendar date it's going to be, but we've carried an escalation value there. So between the two projects at Runlet, you're at $131 million, and at Broken Ground, you're at $125 million, approximately $6.5 million delta. The next page is the detailed breakdown of the site, which is really where we want to focus of that $1 million difference. So we've done takeoff. We did that last summer for the Broken Ground, so we've carried those forward to today into this slide. And then the Runlet is what a recent estimate based on the site concept that HMFH provided us last week. So we've been working diligently to do those takeoffs and assign values associated with that. And you can see the lines carried across between Runlet and Broken Ground. There are ups and downs between each of them. Obviously, the sites aren't the same. So there's going to be some pluses and minuses for both categories. And at the end of the day, a couple of the things, retaining walls occur at Broken Ground where they don't occur at Runlet. There's a running track because of field space. We have the ability to do that at Broken Ground. That was in the design when we estimated it. So there's a $750,000 value there associated with Broken Ground that's not in Runlet. It doesn't fit. And then stormwater treatment is, we have another slide for this later on, but there's engineering and such has to happen at Runlet that hasn't. So we've made some assumptions with what that stormwater management system will be. Because it's such a tight site, the premium at Runlet for that stormwater management is because we have to bury that treatment underground as opposed to using the open air to do that. It's always more cost effective to do that above ground, obviously, as you can imagine the cost associated with burying things. So that's the premium that's associated with Runlet just because of, frankly, enough square footage. There isn't enough to do that above ground. So that's the biggest delta that we see on the site side of things. And again, it's demo and longer duration are really the two drivers between these two projects and what's driving that $6.5 million premium. I think on the next page, next slide. Okay. So I don't know if you want to hit on this, Tina, with what has to happen at Runlet in order for
Can I
that to
ask a
hold
quick
true.
question?
Yeah, go for it.
Do your total prices include all of the infrastructure that doesn't exist at the Broken Ground site? Like the city is gonna
Yeah.
have to quote-unquote pay for some of these things?
Yep.
Is that accounted for in
There's
there?
a slide that comes
Yep.
later that talks about
Off-site
they're
improvements.
accounted
Yep.
for, and the slide talks
Because
about
it's
it.
still, that price, even though it's technically not ours, should be included because it's gonna cost the taxpayers.
We're going to get to that slide.
Thank you.
And so some of the things that we've completed at Broken Ground that would now have to get done at Runlet include a site survey, soil and wetlands delineation. There are wetlands along the Bow Brook that we'll have to flag, a geotechnical survey, and then a traffic study. So all of those things we'll have to redo. Like I mentioned before in the schedule, we will have to do a little bit of schematic design work to kind of move the puzzle pieces around to get it to fit. And then a good chunk of our design development will have to be redone.
And actually, if you skip to there you go, next slide, we'll actually assign those costs to that, Tina. That's it right there, yeah.
So basically, there are some of the figures that we have for estimates for that work that I was just talking about, survey, soil and wetlands. You have to do a wildlife assessment. Don't imagine that's going to come up with anything on Runlet. Geotechnical investigation, and then the traffic study. There is, some cost to redoing the phases that we talked about. So we're estimating that right now at a little over $2.2 million. Some of the questions you were asking about, Barb, basically at the Runlet site, we're not carrying anything for a cistern. We have good water pressure at Runlet, we imagine. We haven't done any tests, but we think it will be fine. The cistern is being carried at broken ground right now in those numbers. So if the city redoes the boosted water pressure zone in that neighborhood, we could tie into it. But because we don't know when that work will happen or what that will cost, we're going to carry the $750,000 in our estimate to do it ourselves on site, basically. So that is in there. We know on the broken ground site that the traffic study said in 2038, there would need to be a signal or could be added at East Side Drive in South Curtisville. So we're carrying that at $1 million right now. That work would have to get, coordinated with the city. We don't know if they would make us put it in with the project or wait till later when it's actually needed. There's engineering that needs to get done with that survey. It's on their property, so we would have to work with them, but we're carrying $1 million. We also know that there are minor improvements that need to be made with some of the sidewalks in that neighborhood. There's some tilt downs for handicapped access that need to be corrected, so there's money in the budget in that $1 million to cover those as well. We know that at Runlet that there will need to be some adjustments to the roadways sort of behind the school where we're sending bus traffic out. There'll need to be, intersections will need to be widened slightly. It's not anything too major, but we haven't done a full traffic study there yet. So we imagine that there may need to be some improvements on South Street. There may need to be a light. There may need to be something for a pedestrian crossing. We don't know yet. So it's a little bit unknown. I mean, I would advise that we would carry a same kind of contingency for both sites for off-site improvement for traffic.
Well, we're not adding 900 new students to the Runlet site. They're there already, so
That's
I understand
true.
configurations may change, but
Yep.
it's not the same.
I think the traffic is challenging in that area during drop-off and pickup,
Oh,
so, the traffic study would show any of that. So right now, we don't know, so we're not carrying anything because we don't know. Yes.
The traffic study did not include, signal warrants.
Nicole, get closer to your
Get
mic,
closer,
I know.
sorry.
know.
The traffic study did not include the signal warrants for the ramps.
It's not on.
I think the city took it.
Try pointing it up more too.
The city took that.
There, turn
Yeah, it's the state.
Okay, sorry. The traffic study did not include the signal warrants at the ramps from 393. They said they were going to be done by an HDOT project. That project has gone out to construction. Did that not, what was the findings? Do we know? Because that would probably be another $1 million if that was warranted.
From what we heard from them, the state was going to take that on because it's their jurisdiction and not the project.
Okay, but it's not included in the project, and that warrant was not done. Okay.
Also, the traffic study didn't include exit 16 on 93. So there's a rotary there, Mountain Road, Shawmut Street, East Side Drive. Traffic is horrendous there already without 900 new students.
It's not really.
So the
Yeah, I live there too. It moves really
But
quickly, I
just the
promise.
scope of the traffic study was determined by the city's traffic
Correct.
engineer. So we
Well, my
didn't decide what we were
I
gonna
have
look at,
family
the
that lives there
city
too. They
did.
tell me different, so, okay.
And,
All right, I
and
take
the
it back.
scope was
Traffic
much
is fine
broader
at
than we
exit
would
16.
typically see.
Can you speak into the microphone,
I was
Bob?
saying the scope of the traffic study was much broader because it was coordinated with the city than we typically would see with schools we typically do. It extended much further, so, but
Right.
it didn't go in there. That was because the city did not ask for that.
Okay.
Ms. Campbell.
Nicole, would you mind explaining what you just asked? Sorry, I don't.
I appreciate you asking that question, Jess.
Okay.
Is it working now? Oh, it is. Okay. So the intersection of the currently unsignalized ramps off of 393 and East Side Drive, that was one of the intersections that was included in the study, but the study itself said that NHDOT was doing a project on the bridges over 393, and they were going to do that signal warrants in order to build a traffic signal to decide whether or not you should do one. There's a series of prescribed calculations called signal warrants, the details of which you do not want to know. It's boring. However, so it kind of said the state was going to do it. The state did not do it, and that project has gone to construction, and there's no results on it. And I did, there is someone on the traffic committee who works for DOT, and I asked him because I couldn't find the project, and he said that it was not done. So I don't know why NHDOT decided not to do that, but that intersection, to my mind, would still need to be assessed. And
Right.
if a signal is warranted there, that's probably another $1 million, similar
Which
to the
is
other
not.
one, which is not in
Got it.
this,
Thank
right?
you.
But it's
Holly has a response.
to be decided.
Yeah, so the state asked us for the traffic counts that we performed at that intersection. So
Holly,
we
you have to use the microphone.
And you gotta be
There's
close.
a lot of us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the state asked for the traffic counts that we performed at that intersection, and we provided those traffic counts to the state. So we were, our understanding was that they were going to move forward with the, with the project. So we haven't heard anything else. But I believe that even under the no-build conditions, a signal is warranted or not warranted. The counts. I'm phrasing this incorrectly. I should have the traffic study in front of me.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But it,
Basically without the school.
Right. The counts did, I think the current conditions, even before the school is built, does not change significantly. So,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So where am I in this?
Yep.
Yeah, so basically, beyond those things, operationally, during construction, there are probably some added costs. We know that there's not going to be a lot of athletic field space at Runlet, so we're going to have to find temporary athletic fields. And I know that Jack had been working with the city and had come up with the $500,000 estimate for that cost. Transportation right now is an unknown number. Impact to school schedule, there could be some impact to school schedule. We're showing moving over vacation breaks. So, the cost to that, we haven't put a number to. And then off-site traffic control. Basically, when it's an active construction zone and the school is still functioning, there's going to be some need for probably, police on site managing the traffic flow, potentially more crossing guards. So
Because
all-
there won't be places for people to go on the site or buses to go on the site.
Correct.
For drop-off.
And we can kind of show you that if you want to see a visual to what the site will look like when the two schools are there side by side. It all fits. It's kind of like interlocking puzzle pieces. So, it's doable. It'll just be complicated, more complicated than, a site like Broken Ground without another school. But we can walk you through how we would attempt it. And Harvey's been working with us on sort of the phasing plans, so it's been good to have the construction manager help us with those.
Yeah, and the next slide just goes back to the summary of the deltas between the two. We can go back and forth as we need to answer questions or address any questions, but the bottom line is there's the plus or minus $8 million difference between the two sites in cost of construction relative to, or cost of the project relative to duration change and phasing and logistics at an active site.
If anybody has more questions about the off-site improvements, we talked a little bit about the boosted water pressure zone out at Broken Ground. If you want to see some visuals on that, we have some information.
I heard some interest in seeing the phased
Yeah.
diagram. If you want to show that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind showing
Is that
phasing.
phasing?
Phasing.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this basically shows the existing condition that's out there right now. You see Runlet, you see how the yellow line is where the buses come in right now, and the purple line is where the parents come in. Along that loop road there, there's also parking for the Runlet Middle School and parking for Abbott Downing. So that area is really congested and troublesome, safety-wise for the school. You can see how the fields to the left of the school kind of overlap. And they basically have 3 kind of multi-purpose fields and then baseball and softball. And then to the right side of Runlet, there's a multi-purpose play field and parking for the staff. Okay. So the first phase of construction would be sort of a enabling phase to get the site ready and put in the geothermal wells. Basically, everything shown in red would be taken over by the contractor. They would build, places for the trailers to set up and lay down space. They'd put the geothermal well field potentially behind the building. And then they would create parking for the staff where we have site enabling temporary parking to the right. During this phase, there would still be some play space for the kids to use for PE and some after school athletics, but not much. So that would take about 4 months of site enabling. And then basically the contractor takes over most of the site. So everything in red is now gone. And on the right side of the school, we have the temporary parking lot. So at this point, for the 30 months of construction, the middle school kids are going to have to potentially share the play space with Abbott Downing. And they can use that for PE during school. And then there would be, the kids could use fields off-site, and that's what that, $500,000 allowance was for field space off of the site for the kids to use.
And that $500,000 allowance is just the estimate the district received from the city about being able to use a park, Terrell Park. That does not include costs of transporting students there.
Right. So then during a summer phase, we would take over a portion of the Abbott Downing kind of roadway that comes into the site and create new parking for that school, because ultimately we would take out that center road that goes through the middle of the site. So that would get done, and then some utility work would get done during that summer. So then the next phase, this is all happening during the 30 months of construction. The next phase is when the school is going to open. So you can see here we've kind of taken a stab at what the footprint would look like. We've got the pods going along the front, the main street's still in the middle. We've swapped places with theater, music, gym. It fits in there. And basically you would get your parking in front of the school, and we would suggest that that would get used as the parent drop-off temporarily until the rest of the site is complete. So your parents would be kind of looping through there. Only a portion of your bus drop-off is going to be built at this point. So you could have some buses there, or they could come in potentially and loop what we're calling the fire road. So kind of up there through the back of the site. And drop the kids off there. So this would be 4 months during the time where they're going to take down the existing Runlet school. So they've got to abate it and demo it and start the construction of the site underneath it. So we go to the next phase. You can see, maybe you can't see, but the red lines there, yep. That's the existing building. So you can see how the loop road kind of goes underneath it and the bus loop goes underneath it. Those would get completed in the next 4 months. And at that point, they're also building your fields, starting that construction. And then finally, the finished product for the roadways are all done at this point, and then the new fields get established and that takes about a year before you can play on them.
Three growing seasons.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on, all these schedules that we gave you. If they take the building down and it's done in, January, they're not going to start building the fields right until probably March when the snow is melted and, they can actually start building. So all of these have a slight, tweak to them depending on what schedule we end up going with. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question for Matt. Start to finish, Abbott Downing, how many months was that building of Abbott Downing and the demolition of Conant? I don't recall it taking 30 months.
See, we built that building in 17 months.
right?
Yeah, I was going to estimate.
There were two other buildings built at the same time. So I'm just curious why this middle school is going to take 30 months.
Because we just actually built a middle school of a similar size, and it took us 30 months.
It's
Start
bigger.
to finish.
Okay, well, that I
It's
understand.
210, over 210,000
understand.
square feet, and
Yeah.
it just takes that long to
Okay.
build this building.
Just a question.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger and it's got
Well, no.
more complicated things like the theater in it potentially, so,
Can I ask a question?
yep.
With regards to the geothermal and the photovoltaic, does that fit in here? And geothermal is it under part of the parking or under part of it's all? So you have them both priced at exactly the same. Is that
Yep.
accurate? And will we get the same, net zero that we had asked for?
Well, my answer is going to be, I hope so. I haven't done a full study of this site, like we have all those things we have to get through. But we think that it'll fit, the size of the well field will fit where we're showing it in the back there. Could also fit in the front. We could swap those two things, if we really dive into this and figure out, we'll have to do some test wells. So potentially we'd do a test well in the front, test well in the back, see, if one location's better than the other. We're trying to keep the same kind of ideal orientation of the wings of the school, so I would think that you could still get the same kind of solar voltaics on the roof and get the same kind of production here, potentially. Again, we'd have to study it further, but at first blush, I would say yes.
Okay, and I'll tell you right, I'm not an expert in geothermal and all those intricacies, but doing it at broken ground, we didn't have a concern because there's so much space. We have the flexibility of doing it.
Yep.
Drilling 170 wells won't have any impact on the residents are very, very close. They'll be drilling next to their backyards. That's not going to have an impact on it, is it? Or
Well, I mean,
structural or any otherwise?
I don't think it's going to have an impact on the wells. It may have an impact on how the neighbors feel about that noise.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Additional questions?
Would this be an okay time to have questions for the building committee, or would we wait for discussion?
If you have a question for the building committee?
I do. Hi, guys. As you know, or if you've been observing, we are faced with some decisions, right? We had the charter amendments pass. It was told to us by our legal help that the charter amendments aren't necessarily in effect right now, but that is not necessarily the wisest political decision to move forward as if they are not applicable to this scenario. So we have a few options. One, we do nothing. Two, we put it to a vote and ask the citizens, understanding that we just saw that there is a potential delay. And three, there is just making the decision now. You have put in so much work, and I am so grateful for everything that you've done, and I'm very curious to hear your opinion before we start our discussion about where we're at.
I would like, is this on? Doesn't sound like it's on.
Doesn't. It's on.
Oh, it is on now? It is on now? No. Hi, okay. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Linda O'Rourke. I've been teaching at Runlet Middle School for 26 years. And I would just like to offer some perspective of our current learning situation. I need to think about what's best for kids. And right now, to paint a small picture, the room across the hall from me, parent-teacher conferences, I'm on the second floor. During parent-teacher conferences, rain started pouring through the ceiling, so the teacher put his potted plant under it to catch the water. The room next door to me has a large crack going across the ceiling, and thus the ceiling started peeling and hanging over the kids' heads. So maintenance had to come in, scrape the ceiling so that it didn't fall on the kids, of course. All done during the school day, mind you, when we have kids. My room right now, the heat is, according to maintenance, moderately functioning. It hit 70, which I'm grateful for, because last week in the art rooms, the temperature, the highest it got was 55 degrees. And students were told to go get their hats and coats because it was too cold for them. The plus side is that the flying termite eggs in the walls, it was too cold for them to hatch. So the art teacher didn't have to worry about that. There's mold in the carpets. There's mold in ceiling tiles and, ironically, the health room. The ceiling tiles get replaced, but then the mold grows back because, again, there's the roof is leaking. And then there's just the cafeteria is so loud and overwhelming, and the gym and the new activity room are not in an ideal location, centrally located. I can't stress enough how desperately we need a new building. And while right now, if we did nothing, we're slated for 2028, and potentially that could be one more year, it's still one more year. And that's one more year that, yes, we have to deal with these things, that people have to work in these unhealthy conditions. But also, I imagine, Matt can speak to this, it's costing money to have to seal these leaks and replace carpeting and replace ceiling tiles. So in that extra money that was in this document, I'm guessing that didn't factor in the current maintenance of Runlet that would additionally need to happen. So my vote would be to just move forward.
Other members of the building committee have thoughts about location, about estimates, about the numbers that we've heard, about the staging or phasing? Kate?
Sure. Is this on? Yeah. I don't think it's been a secret that I've been.
It's not on.
Okay.
There it goes.
Yeah.
There we go.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's been a secret that I'm a proponent of the broken ground site and always had been, because I believe and still believe.
Can't hear you, Kate. Is there another microphone, please?
So sorry, guys. We'll get it.
Here, try this one.
Yeah.
Is that better? That's a lot better. I can hear myself now. But, it's not been a secret that I've been a proponent of the broken ground site. I always believed and still believe that it would allow this city to get the best school possible for the middle school students in this community on the best timeline, and would result in the best building for the community. At the same point, I understand that you're faced with a very tough decision, and I respect that you're not in an enviable position with that. I do think that if there is going to be any change in the plan, which, going back to Runlet as a site and moving forward with that, I think that should go to the voters. And I think the price tag associated with both should be in the ballot questions that are on that special election. So if this community chooses that they are putting the location before the price tag, let them make that decision and pay the additional money. Because what we've heard from the community for years upon years is it's too much money, it's too much money. Runlet will be cheaper. What we are finding out is that at this point in time, that's not going to be the case. And I think that if this board wants to, or feels they need to make that decision to move in that direction, I think the community needs to reckon with that as well.
Thank you. Jess, yep.
It is not my intention to put you in an uncomfortable position, Jay. If you feel comfortable, I would love to know your thoughts on this. We're here, I've asked you this at the beginning, I'm going to ask you again. What are your thoughts on this, and what is the general senses you're hearing from the students?
Yep, so Jay Rashad, middle school principal, and I could share a lot of things. I mean, things I think a lot about is, this is a very challenging vote for the entire community. The mic cut out.
Hello?
I think it's our friend in the booth might be.
Yeah, so again, Jay Rashad, middle school principal. The thing I think a lot about is this is a really challenging situation and decision. But I think a lot about this, 25, 30 years down the road, when this community thinks about this project, and did we make the right decision as a school community, not just now for in the moment, the next several years, but 30 years down the road, because this is going to be our middle school for a long time. And I think a lot about that. Again, I just want to make sure we're making the best decision. When we talk about, construction, what that looks like, I've actually professionally experienced that before, even though it was during COVID. Was challenging, was noise. And I just think of the impact, on the kids. Obviously, it would have less of an impact if we build over broken ground. That's just the truth when you think about the athletic fields and things like that. In terms of the construction, about during the school year, whether we moved in over the summer or fall or winter. I've actually experienced that professionally too, where we moved actually during the school year. So working closely with Matt Cashman, I'm confident we could do that. But again, the big piece is this is a really challenging decision, and is this what we decide is going to have a ripple effect on this community over the next 60 to 70 years. So I think we have to be very confident that we're making the right decision for the school community. Last thing, I just think about expansion. If we had to do an addition, I read about and hear from, school leaders like Superintendent Murphy, at some point we're going to have to decide, are we going to have pre-intervention type opportunities for kids, and what does that mean for the school community in terms of additions? So I haven't asked anyone, but I think about, if we had to build an addition on a building, from my perspective, it seems like it would be easier to do for this community, again, maybe 15, 20 years down the road at the broken ground site than it would be at the current site. So I know that's a lot, but thank you for asking.
Do any of the other building committee members have anything they want to add? Questions they want to ask?
Sure. Is this working?
It seems to be,
All right.
yes.
Lean in.
So it's no secret that I've always been a proponent of the South Street site. But what that remains. But what I think about is how much people talk about the tax burden in Concord, and I am really sensitive to the potential of losing the opportunity for school building aid. I suspect that this will be the last year for quite some time that school building aid is available, and I would encourage you to make whatever decision will keep us on track for that building aid, because the amount of money from school building aid is substantially larger than the difference in the cost of the two sites.
To clarify, we do not yet know whether school building aid will be funded. That is a decision this governor and legislature will make in the upcoming budget session, and we will not know that until June of 2025, whether building aid is funded, and we will receive an award until December 2025, and it would be for state fiscal years 26 and 27, 27 and 28 are the 2 years. So there is no building aid right this year that is available for us to say we need to move right now to get it. It is hoping the legislature will follow state law and fund it, but there's no guarantee that they will do that. And we will have to make a decision of whether we go forward then or not.
Okay.
So, I don't know if it's working or not. I'll talk really loud.
No, please,
No, you
because you
gotta do it
can't,
for-
the recording doesn't work if you don't talk.
He'll turn it up.
He's
Yeah.
adjusting
All right,
volumes.
so my question is, if, let's say, building aid is granted, but the project is postponed, is the granting of building aid at risk with the postponement?
No.
No? Okay.
So you would find out in December of this year if you get awarded the building aid. You do have to do an intent to build. You have to kind of basically refile for it May 1st, which we would like to do, so we don't lose our place in line. But you don't necessarily have to have the site decided.
Okay.
And I'll just also clarify that it's my understanding that the location can change, but not a substantial portion of the project, because then it would become ineligible. So we're talking about a new build at Broken Ground versus a new build at Runlet in terms of staying in line for building aid, correct? Okay.
What we have to do is we have to correct.
Holly, you gotta use
It's not
the
working.
It's not working.
Right up your mouth.
Is it working now?
Yeah, all right.
What we have to do is we have to correct the deficiencies that we outlined in our application. So, how we correct those is sort of up to us, but we still have to fix the deficiencies. One of the deficiencies at Runlet, one of the big ones, was safety of site circulation, safety and site circulation. So we still have to figure out how to fix that at Runlet.
So there are problems to solve or challenges to mitigate that
Correct.
go along with a potential change in location. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So kind of along that line, I know you guys haven't had a long time to work on the new layout at Runlet, but to what Jay was saying, have you, in the very preliminary aspect, have you looked at the ability, because I know with the broken ground site, there was a very specific area where you were looking that should there need to be, not that there is, but should there need to be an addition, you could put another one of the same pods that was on the three in a row there, that there was a spot where you could add a fourth one for whatever reason that you needed to be able to reallocate layouts or whatever the need may be, but that it was available on the broken ground site. Is that still an option that's available on the Runlet site, or because of the site constraints does that disappear, which now you're building yourself into a corner that you can't expand, which is kind of what they did with Runlet before, which is why the additions that have happened over the years are kind of so disconnected with the school, and you don't have that flow, which is, as he can tell you, is very important to the school day, and without it, it's disruptive. And that's one of the reasons why we need to build a new school, so.
I think if we had more than a month to put this together, we can see if we can fit in another pod. If you look at like the plan that's up on the screen, right now and the way we're drawing it, you really can't. It's really tight. So each of those fingers is a grade level pod. You do have some expansion built into the design of the school right now because it is designed for 900. Just by the nature of how the middle school teams work, in the number of kids you could fit into a pod. But I mean, we would take a look at it and see how we could get another finger on that.
I think it's an important aspect. Not that we need it today, but no one knows where the city's going to be in 15 or 20 or 25 years. But if we build a school that is maxed out on the site today,
Like
there is no expansion down the road, like Krista McCullough. Yeah, you're stuck, and now you're looking at two schools, or I just think it's very short-sighted for the amount of money that's going to be spent to possibly then limit it to 25 years is not smart.
Ms. Robinson?
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, and I hope you don't mind if I build off of your statement.
Please do.
Even in the long run of expansion, regardless of enrollment rates or anything like that, we are hearing from our academic options in the community, specifically our preschool and our CRTC, that we do not have the room for the students that are needing those services. We turn down far too many students every year for CRTC, for trade school training. We turn down like 250 kids a year to be able to get into that program, and that program is self-sustaining. We also have a record number of kiddos who are being recommended by their parents for special education evaluation. We have the largest preschool population we've ever had in our community, and it continues to grow because we're getting better at meeting student needs early. We will need to expand on all of those options, and preschool is very different from a normal classroom. You need to have incredibly specific accommodations. There is a lower teacher to student ratio that you must maintain for ages 0 to 5 until you hit kindergarten. So that's specialized facilities that we are required to offer by federal law. If a student approaches us at age 3 with a need for an IEP, we take them on. That's the law. And so we're having a record number of those kiddos now. We're going to need a standalone preschool for our community that can accommodate all those kids. We don't have room at any of our elementary schools to do that right now. If we built at broken ground, We would have the space to expand for state-of-the-art early care and education in our community, which is woeful. We are in a childcare crisis as well. Like, all of these things are interlocking, and I think there's more expansion to come sooner than a lot of us realize because of the finite nature of the way that we're educating students now, and the way that a lot of these kids are going to have jobs in the future that don't even exist right now. We have to have state-of-the-art facilities for kiddos to be prepared for those potential careers that none of us could possibly imagine at this point. I didn't know that content creation would be a job 10 years ago, but here we are, and people are going to school for it. So we need to be mindful about the way that the future of work is changing, the way that the nature and best practices of education are changing, and the way that we need to accommodate our littlest people more and more frequently than we are used to. So expansion is coming, not in 30 years, it's coming in 5 years. It's coming in 3 years, realistically.
Just when I first started teaching at Runlet, there were 1,200 students in the building, and we did not all fit. Microphone, please. Oh, gosh, again. I'm sorry. Does it work now?
Give him a second to turn it up.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry.
It's not your fault.
Okay, so when I first started teaching at Runlet, there were 1,200 students in the building, and we did not all fit in the building. One 8th grade cluster, and I teach 8th grade, had to go up to the high school, the basement of the high school.
I remember that.
Which they now use for drafting, I believe. But it was called the...
Satellite.
Thank you. I blocked it out.
It was-
Because we would take turns, one per quarter. So I would be there first quarter. I would then move back for second quarter. Another cluster would move up, and so on. But my point is, we were at 1,200 at one point, and we did not fit then. So if we're just estimating for 900, there's nothing to say we wouldn't go back to.
Well, I
what
think
we
we
had.
we have based our estimate based on our population studies and the criteria set by the state for estimating and reimbursing for population. I think one of the conversations we had is if we had an expansion in the elementary schools and we needed to put more preschool in, would we move 5th grade, which is something we discussed and rejected, but circumstances might require it in the future. Anyone else from the building committee have any? Okay. Yes, Kate.
Just one small other note between the two buildings. My understanding is that track and field is one of the most popular activities at the middle school. It has one of the highest number of students participating in that after-school activity, and I think we all know the importance of after-school activities for middle school students. My understanding, if we do Runlet, we won't get a track facility at that school. They'll continue to have to share and compete for space with the high school. I thought that was a real advantage of the Runlet site,
There's
that can't be replicated.
There's less field
Yeah.
There will be less overall fields at Runlet. There's just not the same space for fields as at Broken Ground.
And no track.
And no track. Although it is closer to Memorial Field, so it can be used. Okay. Well, seeing none, I think we are, if anyone arrived late, the advice we have received from our legal counsel is that if we are to vote on a location, we need to hold a separate public hearing, which we can move tonight to set. Given that we cannot make a decision on a location tonight, we're going to do our normal 30-minute public comment period before we resume our discussion. I will take a brief recess if our building committee members want to get away from the table and for that part of the meeting, or you're welcome to stay and to let people relocate. If you would like to speak, sign up, and if I could get a show of hands of how many people would like to speak, so I can allot the 30 minutes. So
Can we not do 45 minutes?
well, the board can motion to increase.
I move
the
to
time.
expand the time window to 45 minutes.
Seconded.
Second by Ms. Zowski. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We will do up to 45 minutes with 3 minutes apiece. We'll take a 5-minute recess so that we can clear off the table and make room for public comment.
Okay.
Do you guys want us to keep the presentation up?
No.
No.
You can put it down for now.
I need space. Do we have any more batteries for these?
Matt, what did we figure?
a good thing.
Yeah, no hot mics in this room. Yeah, they're on now.
Hello, hello? Everybody hear me?
Yes, Linda, we got you.
Hello?
Perfect.
Yes.
All right.
Speak
We're all
close.
set. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name's Linda Mead, and I live in Ward 7. I just want to thank everybody here, people in the audience, and this whole school board, and the rest of you for coming tonight and listening to this. I attended the last school board meeting on January 6th this year, and I heard testimony from two residents of the Concord, a Mr. Wolf and a Mr. Mancini, who spoke regarding the cost of building a new school versus the cost of renovation. They provided evidence and sources in two states, Ohio and Michigan, which showed that the cost approximately is 50% less to renovate older school buildings versus building new. The testimonies that night made me think about what they said, and I decided to do my own little data research on my own. I looked at New Hampshire schools in terms of communities throughout the state requesting building aid from DOE. And I found a school building aid summary right here, which I'll leave for all you to use and anybody else that wants to make copies. And I found that aid, and it was prepared by Amy Clark, who's a civil engineer, and she was the program administrator for building aid for the Department of Ed. In her summary on page 7, there was a list of 51 communities in New Hampshire applying for building aid in fiscal year 22-23. And out of those 51 communities, only 7 requested aid for new buildings, and Concord was one of them. And 44 that just wanted upgrades done on old buildings and new additions to their old buildings, or a combination of both. You know, you do upgrades to part of it, and then the rest you add on new. Okay? So I was kind of surprised, because I said, boy, doesn't seem like too many people are building new. And then I thought about it. Well, you know, that could be for a lot of reasons, right? So Amy's summary report also showed the amount of state building aid on a graph in this summary with the fiscal years from 2020 all the way to 2041. And it was a graph that started up here, 2020, and nosedived right down. And, for me, it was, the amount paid out by the state for schools consistently dropping over time. And this goes all the way out to 2041. So maybe these New Hampshire communities are opting to choose renovating or doing a combination renovation and addition instead of building brand new schools, as they realize that the amount of state aid is shrinking fast. And it is cost prohibited to build an entirely new building. Well, geez, amazing stuff. I mean, I'm surprised sometimes the data you can find. I'm sorry, I'm
Your
trying to
time
speed
is
it
up, I'm sorry.
It's already up?
Yes, it's already up, I'm sorry.
All right, well, I will leave this.
Thank you.
My
Thank you,
summary,
Linda.
Thank you.
along with this. You guys can keep it and share it. Hope somebody will read it. Thank you very much.
Next, I'm sorry if I can't quite read the first letter. Tom Casino? Could be an R, could be Auburn Street? What did you?
Oh, Colling, thank you.
Oh, I thought those were C's.
Kolling.
Oh, sorry.
Auburn Street, and just a couple of comments. One, the numbers that are presented here. I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
You got really close.
Okay. The numbers that are presented here now with estimates of cost were asked for by the entire community before we ever had the elections and went through what we were going to get. I'm not certain why it took so long and why estimates couldn't have been provided ahead of time. Maybe we would have, maybe Broken Ground is the best location. I don't know.
That mic
Okay,
is
hear me?
on.
We got you. It's all right, we got you.
You just have to be very close. Try another mic.
So anyhow, if we had had numbers that were requested originally, this might have all been mute. But now we're getting numbers, and I'm not certain where those numbers are coming from. They're here, but we still don't know what we're getting for the $157 million. What's the design? what's going to be included in this school? What can we expect to see once it's done? Are we going to be able to use it for other options, or maybe community things, so forth? I just don't see that in any of the plans that have been presented so far. And I would ask you to at least get some of that information out to us. And my last comment is, I agree that the board should be autonomous. There's a lot of good things about that. But when I come to a meeting or I read in the newspaper that the school that we have is falling down, the roof's leaking, the windows are being held in with duct tape because they're broken, you wouldn't do that in your own house.
Right.
If the roof were starting to leak, you would fix it before it falls down. So I'm a little disappointed in the autonomy that you're not at least maintaining the stuff that we currently have. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I laughed because I let our leak go. Please, so that we can get through this and that everyone who has signed up can speak, if we can keep the demonstrations to a minimum, because that's just cutting into public comment time. Rebecca McWilliams.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Rebecca McWilliams. I am a resident of Ward 7. I live on Silk Farm Road. I have twins in second grade at Abbott Downing, and I am very interested in what we can do to come to a resolution to this important question. I would encourage the board to please, after public testimony, consider putting forward a motion for a public hearing to discuss a second site. I think it's worth having the public really give their input because this is a really important decision for the next 30 years, and I want to make sure that we have considered everything we can as a community. That being said, I will tell you that I have been an architect for the last 22 years, over 10 of which was for schools, mostly in Massachusetts, but I have deep experience with construction of new and renovation and addition projects. And I will say that there is a real problem here with this, where I'm feeling as though the public is receiving numbers and estimates at the last minute, and there's a trust issue there. So the way that this is being handled is really not healthy. I'm concerned that right now there's going to need to be some rebuilding of trust with the data, specifically line item budgets. I'm not really seeing that in the summary presented this evening, and I think that that's a disservice to the public because I really do want to know, as an architect, is the grand stair in or out? Is it in or out at Runlet? Is it in or out at Broken Ground? Because that's a significant cost. Maybe that's too technical for the general member of the public, but I do feel like that this is really important as we move forward to make sure that the transparency is there. In addition, I just want to be very clear that because this is a 30-year decision, we should absolutely make sure that everyone is able to participate, and that's why we do need to have a community vote on this. So kudos to the folks saying, let's put this forward to the community. Again, because we're dealing with cost escalation, and we're talking about construction where year over year we know it's going to be a 3% increase, sooner rather than later. Let's get the vote out. Let's make it happen ASAP. Let's not drag our heels and spend more money doing something that may not be the final decision. Let's put it to the voters as soon as humanly possible. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you do as public servants.
Thank you. James Meineke.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
James Meineke, 192 Silk Farm Road. What Rebecca didn't mention is we also have a 4-year-old who will be going in at Abbott Downing very shortly. I have the honor of serving on the PTO over there, and I'm not speaking for them, but I'm speaking as a parent, saying that if my children go into Runlet the way it is right now, I am fine with that. If it takes longer to get the right answer for this community, I am fine with that. We have a team of some of the best architects in the country for schools. The engineers here are unparalleled. The contractor you have on board doing the budgeting is unparalleled. I've worked with RFS and Harvey for Phillips Exeter. We did a summer slammer project that Harvey is finishing the geothermal wells on now, 8 years after we started the design of it. We put a geothermal plant under a 100-year-old building. The field is 50 feet from the building. The wells at Runlet will not hurt anybody's houses. Nothing's going to go wrong with that. And if the kids at Phillips Exeter can handle air conditioners in their classroom windows so they don't hear the drills and they don't hear the construction, And they can do things like reschedule classes, so scheduled classes are away from the construction. And Harvey has the technology to tell you how loud it will be. HMFH can tell you what walls that sound will go through and what can be done in the interim to stop it. We have the technology. What we don't have is on the board side, on the owner's side, somebody functioning as the owner's project manager and the owner's rep, who is supposed to be telling you guys how to interface with all of these experts. No offense, you are all doing an incredible job herding cats right now, but you need somebody guiding you. And if you don't do that now, we are all going to end up with a continued mess and lawsuits. And then who's going to want to run for the next election sitting in those seats? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Marcy Charette?
Good evening. What do I?
Just really-
close.
Hello?
Hello. Yep.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Marcy Charette, and I am the one who has written the school board with report cards, unlike anybody else in, I think, this school district. For December and January, you both unilaterally had F grades because you did not follow the assignment. The assignment was not to give us facts and figures, timelines, and costs on two options. We needed and wanted and have been asking for years for three options. Those three options are Rundlet as it is, repairing and restoring the building that we have, new construction at Rundlet, and broken ground, which we pretty much recognize is not going to happen. You have not listened to the people of Concord. You need to listen to us and give us the information that we want. Not on the two options, the new construction and all the bells and whistles that you want to do. You need to give us the bells and whistles that we want, which is a reconstructed, restored, and functioning building that we have on its own footprint. Until you do that, you're going to get opposition. And that opposition is not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Wells?
Jeff Wells, Ward 5, Samuel Drive. Just one item of note, the word on the amendment is relocate, it's not locate. Okay, so the building has not moved. It's still on South Street. You're not moving it anywhere.
But I'm talking about the RSA, not the
Okay,
charter
well.
amendment.
All
Thank
right,
you.
here's the big assumption you're making here, that you're still building new. You don't have a budget. You don't know what school building aid is going to be. The good chance is going to be nothing, or it's going to be very little. But yet you're talking about $164 million now. So you sat here as a board and as a committee tonight, and you gave them a $4 million raise and didn't say anything. In fact, you asked very few questions. Design Delta in 5 months. There's no explanation why there's a difference of 5 months between the design of Runlet and the design of Broken Ground. Why shouldn't that design, and you could have asked, and maybe there's an answer to that. Why can't that design move from Broken Ground over to Runlet? It's a rectangle going from one plot to another. I mentioned so the cap was 152 million, now we're up to 156 million. The site cost is nearly $1 million more from Runlet. Runlet is clear. You have how many, 26 acres of forest to clear over at Broken Ground, and it's gonna cost more to do site work at Runlet? I don't understand that. Why didn't you question that? I don't understand. Infrastructure. You still haven't given us any detail on that. Not one person has ever mentioned Portsmouth Street other than myself. That is a three-way intersection onto a small road. How are you going to afford that? And you're talking about exchange of light changes at the up on 393. That has nothing to do with what we're doing right now. You're wasting your energy talking about that. And you're already putting in preschool into other schools and expanding the new one you're going to that you're talking about building. Concord is aging. New Hampshire is aging. Taxes keep going up. Property keeps going up. New families won't be able to afford to move here. You're not going to have a population explosion in your schools because young families won't be able to afford Concord. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, sorry, Regan Bissonette?
I didn't know she was here.
She signed in. There she is. She's hiding in the back.
Good evening. Is this on?
Yes.
You just have to be close.
Use your karaoke voice.
My name is Reagan Bissonette, and I live in Ward 5. I have a third grader who's at Krista McAuliffe School. And I wanted to start by thanking you all for being here. I don't think I'm the only person who really wasn't enthusiastic about coming here tonight, but it's such an important issue, and so I really appreciate the time that the school board has put into this. I just want to emphasize that we needed a new middle school years ago. I think it's really important that we prioritize a decision that is going to allow a new middle school to be built sooner rather than later. I originally supported rebuilding the middle school at Runlet. I thought that that was the best site. Once the decision was made to build at broken ground, I accepted that decision because I did not take the time to run for school board and be in your position to make difficult decisions. And then I opposed the charter amendments because I believe that we need a new middle school sooner rather than later. So one thing I'm very concerned about is hearing from folks now that we should consider renovating the school. I think it is absolutely important that we maintain the assets that we have, but I think it's very clear that Runlet is past its useful life. And I feel that we would just be throwing good money after bad if we spent a huge amount of money just to renovate the school without a plan to build a new school. So I would just like to make sure that that is what we focus on, is making a choice that is going to allow us to open a new middle school as soon as possible for our teachers, for our students. I personally have already given up on the hope that my third grader is going to be at a new middle school. I don't want to be coming back here in 10 years feeling sad that we still don't have a plan for a new middle school. I know a lot of families who have, already kind of missed the boat on this. And so thank you for your time. Again, if we delay further, we're just going to keep increasing the costs to build a new school. We can't just keep kicking that can down the road. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ashley?
Good evening. I want to echo Reagan's thank you. My name is Ashley Babladelis. I live in Ward 5. I have two kids who go to Krista McAuliffe School. On our way over here tonight, we all three agreed we didn't want to come to this meeting. They got to leave when my husband finished work. I'm still here. I didn't want to come, and yet I'm here, and it's incredibly important that you all hear my voice because I'm representing other families who can't be here tonight because of childcare issues, because kids are in clubs and sports and activities, because a lot of parents are working jobs and can't come to a meeting. So it's really important, and I'm taking what I have to say. I'm making the assumption, and I believe it, that I'm speaking for other people who can't be at this meeting. I'd like to just ask around the table here and behind me, please raise your hand if your children will be impacted by the new middle school. Right, so I didn't, excuse me, I have the chance to speak right now. I'm not asking about taxpayers, I'm asking about children and our future, which I personally believe and feel very strongly that public education is our future. So if you want to come up and talk about taxes, feel free. I'm talking about our children, and what is so important for them is that they understand that their community cares about them and doesn't deal with a building that is falling down. I'm shaking. I feel so strongly about this. I'm on the verge of tears. I'm so disappointed in our community for letting our kids down. I'm not saying that you all are letting our kids down. I'm hearing voices behind me that I'm just so disappointed. And I just think I needed to say that tonight. That's honestly probably why I came more than anything. Thank you for what you do. Please build a new middle school as soon as possible.
Thank you. Stacy Brown?
I'm really glad I get to follow Ashley. I'm a city councilor, actually her city councilor. Can everyone hear me? But I'm here as a taxpayer. And I'm glad to hear that she's concerned about her kids. I'm concerned about our kids. And I'm angry that there was a 2017 facility assessment and those problems that were identified were not fixed then. In that assessment, the roof was fine. They needed, electric panels needed to be upgraded. The HVAC was new in 2010. And in fact, we're still paying. We have $1 million left to pay on that bond for the HVAC at Runlet. So whose problem is it that the building is in disrepair? I am tired of buildings in Concord being allowed to fall into disrepair, and then taxpayers are the ones who have to foot the bill. This isn't the only building that is coming up in the CIP that we're looking at, it has to be repaired. So this is a burden on taxpayers. It's not fair to kids. It's not fair to families. So I think it's awful that there were termites, but I also know that HMFH, Jack Dunn and Matt Cashman flew out to Nebraska to look at a school and check out the YMCA that was attached to it. Was there concern about the roof then? No, there has been a lot of time and a lot of money spent on this project. And we need to focus on taking care of that building. If it's leaking, then patch it. Pam, you and I met last year, and you said that if we didn't get building aid, we would renovate the roof or something.
I did not say that. I said I could not tell you what the board would decide to do. If
You said it would be up to that board. It
I
would be
said
up
that's
to the next
exactly
board.
what I said.
Yes. So, and I know that this board did get an assessment for what it would cost to put a new roof on. So you need to put those numbers out as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Please don't lie about what I said. Molly Swanson. She said I said something
I
else.
know,
Exactly
but you-
different.
Just gotta let it roll. Hi, thank you very much to you all. I'm in Ward 10. I have a kindergartner currently, and I do really think about, regardless of what happens for my particular children and where they'll be if they end up going into Runlet or not, that's not really my concern. I really am very concerned with what is going on right now. The fact that the health of our children, the health of our staff is very important, and we need to be able to act as quickly as possible as we're able to move to a new building. And I do really appreciate, I think that the amount of information you guys have come up with, what the architects have done in a short period of time is impressive. I didn't expect to have this comparison so quickly. So I really appreciate the judgment that you've shown, and I think from a cost perspective, if we were all renovating our own home, the cost savings of going to, one option versus another would be a huge portion of our decision. So I really think that that's not to be dismissed, that the lower price tag of the broken ground is really says a lot, and not to mention the easier ability for us to get that project to completion. And then the ability to expand, I do really believe that Concord is an attractive place to live, for a lot of reasons. And nationally, the New England region will be more attractive to more and more people
as time goes on. So I think it is very much, we get the most bang for our buck if we can build a middle school that can last us for not just a shorter period of time, but as long as possible with room for expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Galladeri?
Can everybody hear me? No?
Right into
Closer.
it.
Closer? All right.
No.
Great. Hi, my name's Chris Galdieri. I'm the parent of a first grader at Krista McAuliffe School and a junior at Concord High School. I live in Ward 5. And sitting here tonight, I am reminded of a phrase a friend of mine once shared with me. She picked it up from a self-help group, but it's really useful when someone is deeply in denial about things, and that is time out, reality check. Looking at the timelines in the handout here, none of them regarding broken ground account for the fact that a vote on building at broken ground would fail. It would fail by the same margin that the charter amendments passed by last fall. This board had a year following the December 2023 vote to try to persuade people that building at broken ground was the right thing to do and the best course of option, and people didn't buy it.
Right.
The charter amendments passed because we didn't believe you, because you weren't persuasive, by a 2-to-1 margin. I would like the board to stop wasting our time. Stop indulging in this broken ground fan fiction about something that is never going to happen that the city does not want. Get to work, rebuild at Rundlet the way a majority of Concord voters, an overwhelming majority of Concord voters, would like you to. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 10 people who have signed in to speak, so I'll ask for a motion to shut it off signups now and extend public comment to 8 p.m.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Higgins, seconded by Mr. Richards. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Roy Schweiger.
Did I get it in time?
No.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. We said 45 minutes.
I have been using a pair of head assistants that don't work in all Illinois.
All right, fine. Betty, I will add you to the list, and you're the last one, okay?
You'll be the final speaker.
Could you let
Would you
Mr.
like me to sit down?
Yes, I'd like to.
For now.
For now.
You don't go ordering me around. I'll sit down when I want to sit down.
Okay, that's fine. Then Mr. Schweiker can't speak until you let him speak. I said I'd add you to the list.
I'll remember this.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Roy Schweiker, and the first thing I'd like to speak to was the same thing she's talking about. We have a concern, I think, that people felt the school board wasn't listening to them, and the very first thing they did was change the amount of public comment down from 2 periods per meeting to 1. They hold tonight's meeting in a room that's obviously too small for it, so I hope when you have the public hearing, you put it at the high school or somewhere where there's room for everybody who wants to show up to be there. And I'm from District A. I don't really care where the middle school goes, but I think we need to make the process work. I think that one of the issues is, from my perspective, it's very important that the kids and teachers don't have to suffer the way it is now, but that means now. That doesn't mean in 3 years. We need to fix the items that are wrong so that we don't have to put up with that for 3 more years and use that as an excuse to make it 1 year sooner. I think that it may cost 5% more to build it at Rundlet, but if that's what people want, 5% is a very small part of the total cost, and that's really where this thing belongs. And something that's not been included in there is if you decide to build it at Rundlet, you've got all those acres of broken ground you could sell. That might well more than pay for the difference. I don't know if the city would buy them for conservation land. I'm sure you'd find some developer that would love to fill that up with houses. So, you know, probably if you think about that, it would actually be cheaper with the numbers you have. But anyway, the last thing I want to say is I thought that we had a issue with the fields not being ready. I thought there was a turf field. I don't know if there is yet or not.
We did not approve a turf field.
Okay. But if that was one of the things that was going in, that would be something that could be ready sooner. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Madeline Minot?
Thank you. You've heard from me a few times, and I'm back. And we're going to keep having middle school meetings, and we're going to keep telling you the same thing. I'm Madeline Minot. I live in Ward 4. I have 2 kids at Krista McCullough School. As I've told you before, my priority is a new middle school anywhere as soon as possible. I'm disappointed and frustrated that based on the information you presented today, we've lost at least a year or more, and we have increased costs, which come with delays. I know your hands are tied due to the charter amendments, but please don't wait until June or November to continue making progress. I don't want to vote on a location. I voted for some of you to make that decision. I would support the original Broken Ground project. However, if you choose to rebuild at Runlet on this schedule, that means construction in 2027 and 2028. That's during my oldest 8th grade year and my youngest 6th grade year. I'm very concerned about the effects of construction on my kids and their education. They also both love sports. That's one thing they're really looking forward to in middle school. We'll have less sports fields, and they're going to have to get bused somewhere else to hopefully have similar opportunities than the other middle schoolers have now. People who are advocating to rebuild at Runlet now don't want to rebuild at all. They were disingenuous in their slogan and lawn signs. Now they want to renovate. Renovation will not give our district students the great school they deserve. There is no way that it would be safe to renovate a building full of asbestos and lead while our students are in it, including my children. So please stay the course with the decision that has been made a long time ago and that we've been talking about for years to build a new school and do it as soon as possible while making it a priority to minimize the impact on the students that will be there while you're constructing.
Thank you. Francine Philippe? Philip?
Hi, I'm Fran Philippi from Eastside Drive. Thank you all for everything you do. It just boggles my mind to have you be in this position. But I just have a couple of questions. On the construction cost, there are no pages here. The list of construction costs, it says that the site costs are going to be $1 million more for Runlet than Broken Ground. I don't understand that. That doesn't include demolition because demolition is separate. I see Runlet's just having the building removed and then cleaning up that area if that's the cost of the site cleanup. But Broken Ground, you have to take down 25 acres of trees and remove all the stumps and debris and then refill that and then put loam there and then grass. That seems like it would be a whole lot more. So I'm just curious about that. I know I'm not going to get an answer, but I wonder if you might be curious too. Excuse me. And I'm thinking about athletic fields. I know that sports are extremely important. My daughter went through schools here and sports were important to her. I appreciate that. But the difference between the playing fields at Broken Ground and Runlet is really different. And I'm just wondering if you've thought of putting the fields in and taking down trees to do that at Broken Ground. Are these fields that are needed, or are these athletic fields that are a field of dreams kind of fields that this would be nice to have? So something else to think about. And somebody mentioned when we were talking about preschool, the need of a preschool, and mentioned having the preschool at Broken Ground. The idea of having preschoolers in the same area as middle schoolers just makes me cringe. So I hope that was just a misthought, but that was said, don't do that. And finally, I've said this before, but providing a quality education. In my day of teaching, I taught at Conant from 76 to 98. I did not have a frilly school. I taught at the time where Conant was bursting at the seams and the art department was in the supply closet across the hall and the music lessons were in the hallway. It wasn't ideal, but quality education depends upon the curriculum and the teachers. And that can happen in any kind of a building. Granted, not having rain or anything else falling on their heads, but I just encourage you to take care and not
Thank you.
provide these kids with things they really don't need to get a quality education in Concord. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Ian McGregor? Ian McGregor?
He's coming.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see it coming.
School Board, Building Committee, thank you very much for being here. It is an unenviable position to be in, and anybody that runs for school board voluntarily deserves it more than just a pat on the back.
Or needs therapy.
My name is Ian McGregor. I am a Zone B, Ward 7 resident, father of two. My kids are 4 and 2. Hopefully they will be in whatever middle school that is built. But I feel like there have been a few mixed messages from the school board, special interest groups, and individual citizens concerning some of the goals of the middle school project. If one of the goals is to preserve as much undeveloped land in Concord as possible for the enjoyment of its residents and local wildlife, then the new school should be built at Runlet and the property of broken ground should be put into conservation to prevent any and all future development of the property. If the goal is to spend as little money as possible, provide a new school as fast as possible with the least disturbance to students, then building at broken ground and selling at Runlet is the answer. All unintended consequences of that decision will inevitably be dealt with by a different school board and a city council at a future date. If the goal is to keep our taxes low long-term, then we need to reinvest into the existing walkable mixed-use neighborhoods around the school by constructing on the Runlet property. We should not be building on the edge of town at the broken ground site and continue the costly, car-oriented, and infrastructure-intensive development patterns that have been a major contributor to tax increases in the past. If a goal is to spend the most amount of money possible for the least amount of improvement while creating the greatest disruption for our middle school students, then renovating the existing Runlet building should be pursued. These goals, as stated, are oversimplified, but they speak to the importance of continuing to define and refine what the goals of this project are. Setting and revisiting those goals is critical to keeping the process on track and the only way to not get distracted by loud voices, shiny objects, or shortcuts in the process. Let's make sure we're all in the same page and move forward from there. If a vote of the people is the best way to do that, then I am in support of a public vote.
Thank you. Ellen Kenny?
Ellen Kenny, Ward 4. Can you hear me?
Yes.
To begin with, I want to acknowledge that I appreciate all of you who are willing to be part of Concord School Board. I feel like most people join a school board because of their interest in providing the best possible education for a community's children. The 9 of you have been plunged into a highly specialized arena of architecture, engineering, city dynamics troubled by a lack of coherent communication, and incredibly complex finances. If I was one of you, I would not even know what the critical questions were that I should be asking. For this reason, I believe a disinterested third party that a gentleman earlier referred to as an owner's project manager should be involved in this process immediately. Having independent oversight from someone with the necessary experience who is not on the payroll for any aspect of this project, including construction, is critical in representing the best interests of our community and in restoring trust. At the past 2 meetings, 2 separate members of this board made the statements that we seem to have totally lost sight of the children in this process. I beg to most emphatically differ. Those of us arguing to rebuild at Runlet have the children, current and future, uppermost in our minds. I had a conversation last week with a freshman at Concord High School who was describing to me what she had learned about climate change and her response to an account of the LA fires that she had been listening to on the radio. My generation didn't create this problem, she told me, and we have no idea what our world is going to look like when we're adults. She went on to say that it was no wonder that anxiety is epidemic among her peer group. Some would argue that the Broken Ground Plan, with its destruction of acres of mature carbon sequestering trees and habitat, is really not that big a deal in the grand scheme of environmental catastrophe. And perhaps that's very sadly true. But a bigger truth is that if we don't make the hard decisions to conserve and protect these fragile, finite resources each time we can on a local level, we are abdicating our responsibility to our children, the ones that are struggling now with existential anxiety, and those in the future that will be living with the choices that we make now. We don't know as yet what keeping a school in its current location might look like.
Thank you.
But we do know that
Ms.
our
Kenny,
children.
your time is up.
I
Thank you.
have 30 seconds
Well,
more.
you don't have 30 seconds more. Thank you.
It's time to take the broken ground site off the table and begin the process of rebuilding at Runlet as soon as possible. Thank you.
Barb Beely or Boulay?
Barb Beeler,
Beeler.
Ward 10. What we're missing partly here, I'm thoroughly for rebuilding at Runlet for several reasons, and they mostly include the kids. The fields that you're talking about at the Broken Ground site would take about half of the fields from the Broken Ground School. Those kids need those fields for activities. Yeah, That's not true. I would.
Hey guys, let's just let people finish.
But whatever. But my main concern is the upkeep of the buildings. Broken Ground School, my classroom last year and this year has termites coming up through cracks, and it's the newer part of the building. It's taken years for an update in the circulation system of the heating and cooling of the place. If we don't take care of our older buildings, which it seems like we have not done at Runlet, then those 5 years are going to look pretty sad for those kids. So think about the kids when we're upkeeping what buildings we have in process. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Calvin, or Sarah, maybe? Sorry.
I sent everybody on the board an email this afternoon that I really didn't have time to write, but I have a lot of what I wanted to get out in it.
You gotta get closer to it.
You have to get right up. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I really need the school board to be the adults in the room, and I'm really sorry, and I don't mean that in a bad way. We are not dealing with the same set of facts between two sides of what's happening out here. The goalposts keep getting moved every time. It's, we gotta build over here, oh, we can't have an auditorium, oh, with the fields are this, and the trees are that. We need to deal in the same set of facts. The majority of people want a new school. Back in 2017, we were supposed to have a new school, which is why we're not wasting money on Runlet. We're fixing and patching as needed, but why throw money into it without, it's just gonna be a waste. We need a new school. The kids deserve a new school. And when you get a new school when you're a kid, you think the community cares about you. I went to Garrison, and then I went to Beaver Meadow when it was brand new. And it felt really good. It felt like, wow, they care about us. We're important to this community. The kids are important. They have had the same school for 70 years, and we're talking about not upkeeping it. It's 70 years old. There's lead in the, but there's all these issues of construction. I just really, the board made a decision in 2023. We do not have to change course legally because of these amendments. I know several people that voted for the amendments that had no idea this is what the outcome was. I was told, oh, they can't change Runlet. It doesn't work that way. We're going to still build Runlet. We're going to do it at Broken Ground. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be faster, and the kids will move in there sooner. My son was in kindergarten when I got notices on my phone about how we're building a new school, and we decided this is going to happen. He is now graduating 8th grade this year. We are wasting time. We are wasting money. There's a small interest group that is not dealing in the same facts, that's moving goalposts, that's telling stories and flowery everything. We need to be the adults in the room and do what's right for our city, for the future, for our kids. It's important. We made the right decision back in December. You guys stood up for it back in June. Everything these people say they can't find, it's all on the website. It's all on the YouTube channel. It's all there. And I don't know why the newspaper doesn't put the website in the paper or the patch. It needs to be out there for people. The information's there. It's all available for everyone. It's completely transparent. I ask that everyone tries to look into it. We need to be the adults here and not let people with bad faith arguments sway 43,000 people's future. I mean, this is the future of our kids. We need this school. We need it soon. It could have been 60 million 5 years ago, and here we are at 150 and counting and counting and counting. Legally, we don't have to turn back on this. We don't have to waste time. We don't have to have another election that people won't know where it is. When it is, people have to work. You guys have all the knowledge with you. I trust you. You have all made the right decisions. You have all advocated for your decisions. You know more than even what I do, spending hours and hours combing through these documents.
And your time's about up.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you. I really appreciate you and all your decorum and everything else.
Thank you. Meredith Cooley.
Good evening. Thank you so much for all your service to our community. It's already been said so articulately by Reagan behind me, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time reiterating. But as a lot of people know, I was very much part of the Concord Green Space effort to rebuild at Runlet. At Concord Green Space, rebuilding was never up for debate. We know our kids and our teachers and the staff that work so hard for our children needed new school. The current one is not safe. Renovating it would be problematic with major health implications, and a waste of money in terms of, well, you guys voted on this in 2019. I don't have to make the arguments. So I was disappointed in the vote in December. After so much work trying to have the rebuild happen at the Runlet site. But we pivoted, and what I'm hearing is that there's push for renovation, and I just wanted to come and say that rebuilding a new building for our kids is what they deserve. And I echo Ashley in terms of parents not being able to be here to voice that as well. So thank you for your time, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Liza Poirier.
Hello, my name is Liza Poignier, and I have two children at the high school, and I live in Ward 7. My comments are very focused, and they're not about the location, but I decided to speak when I heard some of the comments about renovation. So what I'm saying is not as much for all of you as for some of the folks behind me. So when I was a board member in 2018 or 2019, we were given a presentation by Matt Cashman and Jack Dunn regarding the feasibility and finances of renovating the existing Runlet Middle School versus building a new middle school on the same campus. Three things about the renovation presentation stand out in my memory, and Jim and Barb were there, so they'll probably remember the same. First, the structure. Runlet does not have what they call good bones. The building materials used were not meant to last 100 years. The deficiencies in the current structure mean that only two large parts of the building could potentially be saved and repurposed. Which leads to the second memory, money. Renovating would cost almost as much as building new, 90% if I recall, and Matt can probably confirm or deny that. And third, logistics. Renovation work on an active school building would have to be largely limited to weekends and summertime, which is impractical or maybe impossible, unless provisions were made to move the students somewhere for months on end during what amounted to a partial teardown. If I remember correctly, we had a short conversation about throwing good money after bad, and then we voted unanimously to build a new building. Yesterday, I had a brief conversation with a current board member who said there's a lot of agitating in the community about renovating instead of rebuilding. While there are those who think that renovation makes sense, I hope that based on what I just said, that you would take a closer look at that. And when I say you, I don't mean you know, right? There is no large public conversation occurring that could properly be called a groundswell of support for renovating. It's not there. It's a bad idea. Earlier today, I told my daughter that some folks wanted to renovate Runlet. She laughed out loud and she said, "Have they been there?" I know that you guys have been to Runlet many, many times. You understand how infeasible it is to renovate. I would venture to guess that maybe some of the folks who would like to renovate haven't been there or haven't been there in a while. Haven't seen the buckets and the basins that are there to catch the rainfall. And maybe are just not aware, not their fault, but not aware of the structural, financial, and logistical challenges of transforming an old deteriorating building into a building that will meet modern health and safety codes and be an appropriate learning space for Concord's middle schoolers for 75 years to come. All that to say, I hope that you will not waste a lot of time on revisiting the renovation question, as the possibility was already investigated and rejected for ample, valid reasons. Thank you for your time and consideration, and as always, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Hoadley, you may have the last word. Okay, then I'm closing the public hearing. Thank you, everyone. Could we invite the architects back in? Thank you. Just gonna run to the restroom. I think they just went out into the Dewey room for space reasons. No, they're still here.
Spider on Tara's jacket.
Okay, we got it?
Roy, how can I help you?
15. I was going to suggest that I have 15 seconds. If you hold this public hearing, you hold it at Rumble.
You know, we cannot live broadcast at Runlet.
That's the only reason.
That is the reason.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
We could still have it there.
Yeah, we just want to live broadcast.
We could record it.
Yeah, which I think that's
And post it.
I think that's difficult for families.
Yeah, they might want to be able to see it in real time. I get it. Something, yeah.
Might be time because we're having problems with the receivers. That's why we're cutting it.
Thanks for being willing to drive our
You should have it in case you need to refer to it. I'm going to start just with a couple of questions that came up during this presentation so that you might be able to respond to. Some of them, one of the questions here is why are we seeing these estimates of the different costs between the two projects for the first time? My memory is that these costs are essentially very similar to the cost comparison data, maybe a little more broken down than we got before we made the decision in 2023. Is there anything substantially different in these two?
No, I don't think my mic's working.
No, it's on.
Can you hear it?
Just gotta
Gotta be close.
lean in.
Lean into it.
I don't think there's anything substantially different.
Thank you. There were also a couple of questions about, where is the design? There is a preliminary design for the broken ground site, which is what they've been working on, which we would have to do anew with the Runlet site if that is where we chose to go. But that did include conversations and decisions the board made about where to use granite and where not to use granite, whether to include an auditorium. Some of those things were discussed, and that's on the website, as somebody said. Although we're happy to answer questions. A big question was, why is the site work more costly at Runlet? So I think that would be good to re-elaborate for some folks, because it was a common question.
I think one of the big drivers, and I'll let Keith talk to it more, is the stormwater detention system that we have to build at Runlet. Basically, out at Broken Ground, and we have our civil engineer here too, out at Broken Ground we have more space, and we can do something like a detention pond, so it can be surface water treated. When we go to Runlet, because we're in such tight quarters, we have to put everything underground. So those are, you've probably seen them around the city, being installed. Either they're like big plastic kind of containers that go underground to hold the stormwater, or concrete. So they're much more expensive.
Can I chime in on that? I'm Rick Brewster. I'm from Ward 7, but I'm on the building committee. And the difference is, think of it, you're building a septic system versus you're building a pond. The pond, you dig a big hole, fills up with water, it evaporates, goes away. With the other system, the storm septic system, it's an underground leach field. So you have to put everything underground. So you've got these huge pipes that could be 4 or 5 feet in diameter and all filled with stone and brought up, and it's 5 times the cost of digging a ditch and opening and let water go in. So that's what the consideration is. So that's why it's so expensive, is because you're doing it all underground. And then you're covering it over so you can pave over it and park on it.
Thank you. And we do not have a stormwater system currently at Runlet, is that correct? Because it wasn't required when the school was built.
Probably city drainage.
I think it goes into Bow Brooks.
Yeah.
Drains into the brook directly.
So.
But if you renovate.
Which you can't.
You cannot. Yeah, you.
Yeah.
And frankly, we should not.
I am just trying to answer the question of why can't we just repair the stormwater system we have, because we don't have one.
And if you were to do that, it would correct an existing problem with the site, which is that the stormwater flows into the brook.
But I think also to go along with your question, Pam.
You gotta use your.
With the cost of clearing the trees, where was that included in?
That'll be negligible because they're gonna, the trees are gonna get harvested, and so a lot of that cost gets wiped out.
Line 3 in the estimate.
Just to answer that question.
Yeah, the line 3 there actually shows it. You'll see the premium of $300,000 associated with clearing a broken ground site, and that mostly is attributed to the tree clearing.
Thank you.
There was a question on the design additional, or the new design costs for Runlet. We've done a preliminary design of the building, but that has to be adjusted because it's a different property. And then we have to redo the studies again, right? As you pointed out in that.
Correct. We have to do a site survey. We have to do geotechnical borings. We have to do a traffic study, a complete traffic study. We have to do the wetland delineation.
And did the traffic study recommend any changes to Portsmouth Street?
That was where the signal would go in.
Other than the signal?
2038. No.
No. Okay. Any other questions for our team? Did I do it? I think I got most of the questions that I heard from the audience. I think Liza did a great job. One of the questions I was going to ask was about renovation, and which is where the conversation started with the school board in 2017. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the board for discussion, motions, what have you. If we wanted to do a version of the motion that was made last week, the recommendation from our legal counsel is the proper motion for the public hearing would be that the board notice a public hearing regarding the feasibility of constructing a new middle school at the existing school site at 144 South Street in Concord instead of at the Broken Ground site.
Okay, can you just read it one more time? Yeah.
I can read it if we get to it.
Oh,
but
okay.
I think Barb has it.
Yeah.
So because I'm old and have lived here forever, I have a couple of stories that relate directly to concerns brought up by both people at the table and people in the audience. We talk about our CRTC. I was a senior at Concord High School in 80-81. In the spring of 1980, demolition began in and around the high school to build the CRTC. There used to be a separate building where Commons D is now in the art rooms at Concord High. That was the CRTC. We called it the Vogue. All the kids that wore jeans and flannel shirts and smoked cigarettes went to the Vogue. That's what it was like in the 70s. All the old people are laughing. Yeah. So my senior year, September came, and Concord High School students went to Runlet Middle School from 6:45 in the morning until 11:45. Runlet Middle School, or Runlet Junior High at the time, 12:30 to 4:30. Was that ideal? Probably not. We did it for 3 months so that the CRTC could be completed. There were no drastic drops in test scores, no huge rise in learning problems, and no big behavior issues. We did it. That's what we did. I realize with the current CRTC, that type of thing couldn't happen, but that's something that happened in Concord. When I came back here, was teaching and coaching in the district in the mid-90s, Concord High School addition was built. So picture it now. Y'all live here, the old building with the pillars. That was the high school. Picture the building that's in front of it, where the main office is now in the student center. That was constructed on site while 3 grades, 10th, 11th, and 12th at the time, went to school every day. That new building was opened in January. So it was constructed while they went to school and opened in the middle of a school year. And the process of opening that building had some administrative offices in the new building. It was a crazy hot construction mess. Again, no big nosedive in test scores, no big rise in behavior problems. Kids dealt with it. Was it the easiest, funnest thing? No. I actually, looking back on it, it was kind of exciting because this new building was appearing right before everyone's eyes. Fast forward now to elementary school, 3 buildings built in 17 months, Matt, year and a half. So 2 communities of children were uprooted and farmed around between 3 different. My daughter Molly went to kindergarten in one building, first and second in another, third in another, fourth and fifth in another. The Conant kids stayed right in Conant School while a new school was built in front of them, and they moved into temporary housing classrooms while their school was demolished, all on site. I'm sure if you gave those kids a call, they wouldn't have horrifying, terrible memories of their experience. Am I saying that this is the ideal thing? No. But we've done what we've needed to do in the past, and that was a big concern of the elementary school project, and the board at the time assured the public that the kids would be fine. So I'm hearing many of the same things. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. I hear heavy sighs behind me. I'm just saying that this is the nature of reconstruction and rebuild and demolition of school buildings. We have to put these kids somewhere. Concord's done it a million different ways, and we'll figure out a good way to do it this time. In terms of athletic fields, you're right. Maybe we'd have more fields at Broken Ground. I know as an athletic coach and an athlete myself, the connection between the middle school and the high school sports teams is invaluable. Somebody mentioned track and field. I coached track at Concord High School for 21 years. Runlet got out at 3:30 and the herd would come over. And we would get our workouts done as best as possible. And so many of the high school kids mentored and helped coach those middle school kids. That's an incredible connection for our young athletes. And that's hundreds of kids in track and field that can work out together. To me, that's a kid-centered reason to keep the middle school close to the high school because there is so much sharing of facilities there. I think my favorite testimony tonight was the gentleman who spoke about the 3 different agendas. If this is your goal, if this is your goal, if this is your goal. One of the blessings and curses of the information society in which we live is that you can find an article or a study or a group of people to support your belief. And so every group in here can find 50 people to say why they're right. And 9 of us have to figure out how to make that work for the community. So my biggest, strongest promise to you is that I will keep my personal feelings out of it as much as I can and really pay attention to what the majority says, which is what I think we all need to try to do. I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to apologize for what feels like another reason we can't make a decision tonight. So I'm just letting you know that I feel that frustration, and I'm sorry.
Ms. Robinson?
So I just wanted to respond, Barb, to the 1990s renovation at Concord High. My husband was in school when that renovation happened, and he remarked to me that it was an awful experience and that it was chaos. And just because that's how we've gone about doing things before, it doesn't mean that we have to keep doing it.
And that's not what I said.
No, I
was
know
just sharing
you were like,
stories.
that is just, we've successfully done it before. I'm not knocking your statement. I'm just trying to respond to it.
Yeah.
He and I are very concerned about our 2 kiddos' education. Phoenix is at the middle school right now and had to wear her winter coat in art class, like you had mentioned. Arbor is headed there, and she's going to be a 5th grader at Broken Ground next year, and then she'll be in the middle school. I'm kind of like, my kids got their education sacrificed at the hands of COVID. I think that parents whose children are going to be going through the middle school, I think we owe them better than asking them to compromise. And we're still trying to climb that hill from everything that they lost. Like, I don't know about you all, but my family got messed up by the pandemic and what it did to our education and our ability to exist in a community. So I'm going to opt for what I see is the fastest option, the most affordable option, and the option is going to be the least disruptive. That's where my mind is at this
Although
point.
all those Millbrook and Broken Ground kids are going to be living on a construction site.
Not 10 feet from it. Not 10 feet from them.
Ms. Meeker?
In the spirit of taking action, what action we can, I would like to make a motion, which is that we forego any special or general election and move straight to a decision about the school location.
Seconded.
We all saw
Moved by Ms. Meeker, seconded by,
We didn't hear the motion.
I'm sorry, the motion is to forego any special or general election and move straight to a decision about the location of the school.
Wasn't that what my motion was last?
Yours is to specifically move to Runlet
Oh, I see,
now.
okay.
This is addressing the election piece. Is that all right?
So,
it's,
okay.
Yeah.
And it's seconded. So.
seconded by whom, I'm sorry?
I thought Sarah did.
By Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yes, please. Okay.
It's your first one.
Discussion.
I'll speak.
Can I just ask, so you're saying we would not invite the public to vote on this?
I'm making a motion that we go to the required public hearing as required by law, and then we make a decision about the location of the school and not put it to a referendum, either at a special or general election.
Would you, so that would be a decision on going, I mean, that's
In
just
either
another
direction.
way of saying going to the Runlet site. I just think.
Not necessarily.
Or to say that we
I-
are going to say that it's not retroactive, as our legal counsel has advised.
My motion is to remove an election as an option in this process. And again, the reason I'm making the motion is it gives us a reason to have a discussion so that we can vote up or down or table as is required of us. It's not necessarily because I 100% want that to be the case. It's just the way that we have to get these decisions done. And we keep talking and discussing and asking questions and checking with legal. I'm just putting it on the table so that we can have a real discussion about it. And I will lead that discussion just very quickly by saying I've gone back and forth about this every day since it's been on the table. I'm not sleeping. I'm thinking, what is best for kids and families? What is the best, fastest way to get this school built? We've seen the timelines now. I'm disappointed that we can't get it done in April. It's already pushed to June. I don't know if that's logistically feasible. You know, it's what the city said they can do, but there's a lot of work that has to be done to make that happen. And I just am not sure that a short campaign will do anything to change the current narrative in our city. So, but the motion is on the table. I leave it to discussion.
Ms. Sadowski?
One of the reasons why I'm in such enthusiastic support of that, Kara, is because I just don't think we can float the $55,000 that a special election in June, which would likely have lower turnout. I think that folks have spoken. I think that it's really clear we do not have sufficient public support for the BGS site. I mean, and
That's not what I heard tonight.
talk. Yes,
But again,
share more.
This is a
Yeah.
discussion, right?
Yeah. I would love to hear. Yeah, what do you think?
Let's go in order. So I think I saw Mr. Richards' hand.
Yeah,
And then Ms. Hastings.
I had one, maybe two people from my zone that were here tonight, but their opinions, even though, they're not here, still are count, and they're still valuable. And the things that I have heard from that is that they want pretty much the same thing as Mr. Schweiker wants. They would like the best school for their kids in the shortest possible time and the one that saves us the most money. That's how I voted in December of '23 for those exact same reasons. And the one that is least disruptive to the kids, right? Those things are still exactly the same. However, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of effort, some misinformation, some passion out there, and overall the community said they wanted to vote, right? I have to respect that, and I think that should go to a vote. I don't like to spend the $55,000 it's going to cost to have a special election, which is why previously I had said for November. I don't like that it delays, but also the community knew there'd be delays when they voted for the amendments, so that's where they are. That's where I stand.
Ms. Hastings?
This is so hard, but I heard fairly clearly tonight, I thought, that the majority of the people that spoke want a new building. They want it now, or as soon as possible. They don't want to wait. But I too heard the idea that they want a say in this, and I think this whole discussion between what the charter amendment said and whether that meant we were rebuilding, that meant to rebuild at Runlet, that's not clear to the public. I think that a lot of people might have voted for the charter amendments, not realizing that that was not a vote to rebuild at Runlet. It clearly wasn't. It was about having a say in where the school goes.
Because of.
And that may be, but, the idea is that they said they wanted a vote, but then I'm also hearing you want it done as soon as possible, and this will delay if we vote. If we send it back to the public, that delays. So I do have a motion. I don't know if now is the right time.
Well, we have a motion
We
on
gotta
the
figure
table.
this one, okay. But,
You can
yeah, I guess.
address what motion you would offer if this motion fails.
I would motion that we reaffirm the original December 2023 board vote to build a new middle school at the Broken Ground location and immediately start to look to hire an owner's project manager.
Ms. Meeker, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you. We're gonna put a pin in that one. I would just like to say that because we are not legally required to put this to a vote, this is a choice that the board is making, right?
Correct.
So this is a referendum that we could have put on the ballot at any point during this process. The board has never prioritized putting this to the general public because it is our responsibility to make this decision. I think that argument absolutely can be made that because the charter amendments are changing how we are going to be doing things moving forward, that, they would like a say. But in terms of the priorities of the board, this is the first time I'm really hearing a dedication toward the referendum process and adhering to that referendum. So I just feel like it's a little late in the game to be adding this to our plate.
This is not, a referendum process wouldn't have been my preference for all the reasons we talked about, that there was, even tonight we're hearing this information isn't available when it's been available for a really long time. That being said, there was a vote taken by the citizens of Concord, and I'm not comfortable disrespecting and ignoring it. So I feel like this motion is to say, we're gonna go to South Street. And if that's the motion, then that's the motion we should vote on and set for a public hearing. But to suggest that this motion, I will not vote yes on this motion because I think it's saying we're not going to listen to what you said in the charter amendments, and that does not make me comfortable. So I disagree with the vote of the charter amendments, but I feel obliged to follow them. And I think this says we're going to ignore your will. So, if the motion is we move back to South Street, then somebody can move to hold a public hearing on it. If the motion is, if someone wants to move that we stay at broken ground, that is a valid motion. I will vote against that too. But that's where I am. I just think it's disrespectful to what we saw in November.
So this meeting happened because I made the motion at the school board meeting, and we decided we needed this meeting. And my motion was that we cut the crap already. We've been 62% vote on the charter amendments, dismantling a charter that's been in play for a century. Not the charter, but the autonomy, was a loud and clear message that people didn't like what we did. So I'm uncomfortable with what you're saying because you're just cutting off them. And the nine of us sat here and had a vote a year and a half ago, and here we are, or just over a year ago. So obviously that didn't work. So I feel that that's more of the same. I kept track, Brenda, of everyone that spoke tonight. So the circles are people that favor Runlet. And the underlines are the ones that were either wishy-washy or broken ground, and it was 2/3 Runlet, 1/3 broken ground. So I have it here if you want to check it out.
What about the people that just want the newest building the fastest?
I put that as neutral. Okay. So I don't feel that the majority of people here are telling us they want it at broken ground. I disagree with that. I also did a Facebook Live today, if you all are on social media, and it was shared 34 times, which is a lot of times for a Facebook post to be shared with comment after comment after comment of thank you for speaking up and for listening to us. 2 comments out of probably the 70 or 80 comments on that live mentioned that broken ground would be better. 78 comments didn't.
And I'm
so
not
I
saying
just,
broken
I
ground's
just.
better. I'm saying that I'm hearing that people want it the fastest.
Yes. Well, it can be fast at Runlet too. We just need to stop talking about it and do it. That's sort of how I feel. But I agree with you, Pam. I don't think it's right to cut off. We don't have to make that motion to not have a public vote at a hearing and say, gee, because of everything that we've heard tonight, we're just going to go ahead and make a vote. That is more flexibility.
And I don't think that is Ms. Meeker's intent.
Okay.
And actually, may I?
Can I finish mine?
Yep, please.
I just think that is the effect, which is.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant to.
So.
That's how it would be perceived?
Yep, right. So again, I made the motion not because I feel one way or the other, but because I felt like it's a path forward for a proper discussion. And also, if we decide to have a public hearing about any particular issue, it sounds like we need to have that public hearing in response to motions that we are making.
Yes.
So now we have an avenue, I think, for if we decide to have a public hearing, the election's on the table, and people can comment on it, right? So
would my motion that was tabled stand, or do we need a new?
Well, you haven't brought your motion back, but.
Yeah, that has to come off the table. But we have a motion on the table, so is there further discussion?
Could you repeat the motion?
If the motion on the table fails, I will be making a motion that the board notice a public hearing on the feasibility of the rebuild at Runlet site, if this motion fails.
Well, my motion was the same thing.
But you have to bring your motion back. Brenda's got a motion on the table.
Okay.
Well, Brenda doesn't yet have a motion on the table. Well,
So let's vote.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's vote on the motion that is on the table, unless there's further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I hear 3.
We're voting on bringing back the motion from the table, right?
No, we're voting on Kara's motion.
To not have a public.
To not have a public vote.
election.
Yeah. People have already.
So let's do a roll call.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ms. Meeker, if you'll do a roll call. On your motion.
Ms. Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
I want to make sure I'm understanding. We are voting whether or not. I'm just processing to make sure I understand
course.
what I'm voting on. So we're voting on whether, if we should not have the public vote.
Right, no, I mean, my motion is essentially to move directly to a board decision on the location and forego an election process.
No.
Ms. Hastings?
No.
Ms. Higgins?
No.
Mr. Richards?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Sadowski?
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
No.
And I am a yes. That is 5 to 4, fails.
Hastings, did you want to bring a motion?
Yes. I move that we vote to reaffirm. Sorry. I move that we reaffirm the 2023 board decision to build a new middle school at the Broken Ground location and to immediately look to hire an owner's project manager.
Second.
No, we don't need one for that.
Sorry, point of order. I
Yeah.
think we actually need to separate those motions.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You want to make your motion again? With,
So
So
is it
my-
a double motion?
just make the first part of the motion.
I just have a question, a clerical
Can
question.
she finish
Yeah,
making
yeah,
the
yeah,
motion and then
yeah.
you can make your,
I move to reaffirm the 2023 board's decision to build a new middle school at the Broken Ground location. Period.
second, moved by Ms. Hastings, seconded by Ms. Robinson. Is there, you had a question, Ms. Hastings?
Well,
Higgins.
So we're here because a motion I made at another meeting was tabled for this meeting. So I assume that motion still stands. We would
You
just
have to,
reread
there has
it.
to be a motion to remove it from the table.
So should I have done that in the beginning of the meeting?
You can do it anytime, but we have a motion
I
that's live
understand.
now.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it has to be moved to come off the table. Discussion.
I don't think we have the public support for that. I'm sorry.
Me either.
I have the same objections as I had to Ms. Meeker's amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say.
Mr. Richards?
No, I was just going to say, I don't think we should vote to put that in any more than we should vote to put the Runlet one up. I think we should have a public hearing.
But they
You can have a public hearing on the
On
the
which side?
location without having picked one or the other.
So is that a motion to table?
Or,
Done that.
Is that a motion to table, Jim, or just you're gonna?
No, that's my discussion.
It's just
I'm going to
moved.
let people
Okay.
vote.
Okay.
any further discussion? We'll do a roll call.
Ms. Boucher?
No.
Ms. Campbell?
No.
Ms. Hastings?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
No.
Mr. Richards?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Sadowski?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
No.
And I am a no.
Ms. Higgins, your motion was to immediately go to rebuild at to build at the Runlet site. We can't go to, the advice of our legal counsel is we cannot go directly to that motion. The motion that he recommends is that the board, someone move, if they choose, that the board notice a public hearing regarding the feasibility of constructing a new middle school at the site of the current Runlet School at 144 South Street.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Higgins. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by Ms. Sadowski. I would propose that we would hold this public hearing next Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the high school. We had a really good suggestion that it would be great to have it at the middle school, but the middle school, we cannot live broadcast from the middle school. We can only live broadcast from here or the high school, so I would suggest that we hold it in the high school auditorium. Is there discussion? If that is the will of the board. Is there discussion? Ms. Hastings?
Is it possible to make an amendment to open that up to hear from the public about which site they would prefer at this point?
Well, I think they can
That's what-
testify on either,
Yeah.
they can testify for or
Well,
against.
I just, if we say to hold the vote at Runlet, I feel like we're sort of saying.
So they would vote yes or no?
If we're going to choose a location,
Right.
we have to hold a public hearing on that proposed location. If the public comes in and says, or the board holds this hearing and says, we don't support that, we're going to vote it down, the option would be
To make a new motion.
to make a new motion. Because we've already voted on broken ground and held public hearings on that, then we get back to the whole discussion about special elections.
This is so confusing. I just want to make sure that if we have this meeting, this hearing next week, that we're not locking into one specific site. Could we
You
say?
could, if you rejected this motion,
Okay.
next week, we will hold this public hearing. I assume after this public hearing, someone will make a motion. That motion could be to build a new building at Runlet. That motion could be to hold a special election. That motion could be to say that the board, to reaffirm the broken ground site as that any of those motions would be in order after that hearing.
After that, but we would have to vote down this one in order to make a new one tonight
have to
that
do that no
says
matter
the
what.
public hearing would be to determine a final location.
No, if we want to move,
We need to
we
pass
have
this.
a location right now, it's broken
Broken
ground.
ground.
So if we're considering another location, this is
just that one.
This is the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
We have to have a hearing.
We have to have a
And it
hearing.
has to be on the new site that we
The
would
one
be
we're
moving it
considering.
to.
Right.
Okay. All right.
When
All right.
we did these hearings back, we were considering 2 sites, and so we held the hearing on those 2 sites. We have a site now, so we're considering another site.
Would it make it easier to rescind the vote, and then we don't have a site, and we just vote on which site, and which site wins?
But we can't, my understanding is we cannot do that. We can't.
We don't need a
rescind the
hearing
vote.
to rescind the vote.
You do not
Right,
hear-
but then we don't have any location.
Correct.
So I'm not willing to have no location for a
Well,
new
we
middle
have a
school that needs
location.
to be built.
Right.
So unless that's
We
made
still have
together,
two.
unless
It's
there's
not-
something that's made together, otherwise we will have, to build new.
So, yes, if we rescinded the vote, there would be no middle
And
school.
I'm not willing
No
to do that,
official,
Barb,
I
right
see,
now.
yeah. I feel like we have 2 locations. It's word salad at this point, but I
Yeah,
was just trying to,
semantics.
yeah, right.
That's Robert's rules, man. This
Yeah.
stuff is so friggin' tiring,
Right,
you know?
Right. My whole point with rescinding the vote is then we take the existing site versus maybe the new site, and we all know we have 2 options.
We would
So-
still then have to have a public hearing
Yeah,
on those 2
right, okay,
options.
okay.
So it would probably just be adding
Right, no, I
another
understand.
step.
Yep, I got it. I was trying to simplify, I don't want to make it.
If we get
It was a good
to,
explanation, though. I'm glad you asked.
if the sense after the public hearing of the board is that they want to move to build adjacent to the Runlet Middle School on South Street, then the motion would be to rescind the vote and to build there.
Got it. Right. So I need to be clear, I want to give the public some guidelines. 9,000 million different details were brought up tonight. Next week, it's all about the feasibility of putting a middle school at Runlet. It's Runlet and broken ground, and that's it. It's not remodel versus renovation. It's not athletic fields. It's not anything else. It's simply those 2 things. And that way, testimony can be direct and we're not getting off on tangents that can befuddle and confused. I'm not trying to be critical, just that's what it's for. The feasibility of Runlet, and at the end of that hearing, we decide if it makes sense to build it at Runlet or have a public vote because we didn't come up with a consensus. I just think let's just do this.
Further discussion on the motion. Did we get a
Yes.
second on the motion?
We did.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, yes,
And
Mr. Richards.
I would hope that the information provided tonight would go out to, I would hope our media outlets would do that. It's $8 million at this point, more expensive to build the Runlet site. That's not even accounting for traffic and road modifications. But there's still some ambiguity and uncertainty on the total number. And we look forward to hearing from everybody either at that public hearing or, as always, they can contact us or email us or reach out to us. So.
I agree with, can I just make a point, Jim? I agree with you in the sense that it'd be nice to see the media also linking our pages or having that access, especially if it's just digitally, if that's it. so that the citizens can directly access the information.
That's not
that
what
they
the
are-
media does.
That they're citing.
But
They want us to fight with each
well,
other,
no,
so.
but they
Clickbait.
they also want to provide information, and as Liz mentioned, and we heard someone here who didn't know the information that we have on the website right now. We have, classrooms designs. We have very detailed designs out there.
Right.
And I thank the experts because they put a ton of work on it. They're engineers, they're architects, and and they're construction experts. So thank you for your input, and hopefully it helps us make that decision.
So do we have to
Ms.
vote?
Ms. Campbell had a comment, question.
I know I wouldn't do it right now, but at some point tonight, I would like to put a motion on the table to hire a owner's project manager. And I think with our conversation that we're probably gonna have next week, if we do move forward with run that, having somebody that could be that third party to give us that, I just.
I think we have to vote for the first motion.
Yeah, I know that, yeah, but so after this, I would
Yeah.
Just
jump
getting
in.
it in there.
I know, right?
Ms. Murphy?
I know.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone that tonight's presentation is posted on the district website for all that information, because there was a lot of it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
What is the motion?
The motion is,
The one that our legal counsel gave us.
Okay, the legal counsel.
I move the board notice a public hearing. Ms. Higgins moves the board notice a public hearing regarding the feasibility of constructing a new middle school adjacent to the existing Runlet Middle School at 144 South Street. And I'm sure Bridget will have fun copying that down tomorrow.
Yes. God bless her.
Is there further discussion?
I do, just clarifying question, if we are gonna talk about the election potential, does that also need to be part of the motion, or can we actually just bring it up organically?
That
at
can
the-
come up organically, I
It
believe.
can come up.
Yep.
We do not need a separate public hearing
Okay.
on that.
Okay,
so.
thank God.
Okay, cool. Thank God.
I'm like, we either combine them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready. We doing a roll call?
Yes, why don't we just do a roll call?
All right, Ms. Boucher,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Ms. Hastings,
Vote your heart, Brenda.
Ms. Higgins,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
No.
Ms. Robinson.
Yeah.
We're feeling our feels tonight. Ms.
Yeah.
Sadowski,
Yes.
Ms. Walsh,
Yes.
and I am a yes, that passes.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell, did you want to make your motion now, or do you want to wait until after this, we decide a direction?
I
No.
think we need one, no
needs-
matter what
no
direction.
matter what direction.
Yeah. I would like to make a motion that we look into, or we do actually hire an owner's project manager for this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Campbell, seconded by Ms. Boucher. Is there discussion?
Do you want to leave?
Yeah,
this-
can we, I'm noticing, like, Matt, may I chat with you for a moment? Just you and me right now, bud. I just wanted your opinion on that move, if you think it's a money-saving and headache-saving measure, or if you feel it would be duplicative given your role that you play in all of this.
So we've talked about, can everybody hear me? We've talked about this at length at different times. When I was hired, I was a OPM for the 3 elementary schools. Some may beg to differ, but I thought that came out pretty well.
Owner's
Project manager. However, now is a different time. You can see it with social media. You can see with all of the communication and everything that we have to face. So, I mean, I'm here to help, support, to build in whatever capacity you want to make the best middle school moving forward for this city. So it ultimately is your decision. I understand it. I think it makes sense.
Okay. That's all I needed to hear, ma'am.
Mr. Richards.
Matt, I'm not letting you put your mic down yet. So, all right. Couple of questions. Sure. Would this be a 1-year, a duration position, a 2-year position? Do you see this as you know,
Typically, a OPM comes on early and lives the life of the project.
life of the
Yeah.
project. So we're talking about 6, 7. And what is the cost, annual cost of hiring someone in your estimate? I know I'm putting you on the spot without having.
No,
done any
no, no,
research.
no. We had that early on. Was it about 2 to 4% of the total
2
project?
to 4% of construction costs. It's typically the range of
So 2 to 4% of $132 million.
correct.
That's a pretty expensive
Could I-
proposition.
I would
Ms.
like,
Meeker.
yeah, given that there are serious budgetary implications to this decision, and it is not fair to put the capital facilities director on the spot on this particular issue, while I very much appreciate the motion, and I think we should and will have a discussion about this, I move to table this particular motion until at a later date when we can review costs
And I second it.
process.
Moved by Ms. Meeker to table, seconded by Mr. Richards. It's a non-debatable motion. Can you call the roll?
This is to table.
Yes.
Ms. Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Hastings?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yep.
Ms. Sadowski?
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And I am a yes, that passes. Motion is
Gosh,
tabled.
we
Motion
were
is
there.
tabled.
Thank you.
Yeah, 31st sentence.
Any further motions or discussion? Then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
Robinson, seconded by Ms. Higgins. Any discussion?
None.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. All sides, all opinions, thank you.